that we were going to become a DAO, and what I intentionally planned out from the beginning was to work with a bunch of different organizations. And so this is collectively the core group outside of the main engineering for Collab.Land. So we'll go down this way, and if you want to introduce yourself and kind of what you did in terms of helping out making Collab.Land now happen.
I did everything. It was only me. No, my name is James Waugh from FireEyes. We try and work with like a couple of projects a year and try and make sure that like their token and governance launches the most meaningful way possible. And so that means that at MCon we were talking, James, and sort of like those numbers about Collab.Land really made it clear that like FireEyes should help with that. And so specifically around sort of like the airdrop mechanisms and sort of like the governance standards or sort of expectations is our main value add.
Excellent.
Hey everybody, my name is Ben. I am the CEO and one of the founders of Origami. We are the DAO platform that Collab.Land chose to go with. We're an alternative to existing DAO platforms out there, and so we help build large-scale, enterprise-scale DAOs. And James, I don't know if you checked today, but I think you're about to cross 50,000 DAO NFTs minted today. That is one of the largest DAOs in the world at this point. Yeah.
Woo! Let's go. So my name is Jacqueline Radebaugh. I am an attorney and partner with Jason Weiner PC, and I got brought into the project by EF Mushnick with Launch Legal, and I helped with some of the paperwork, entity design, and formation, and it's been really fun working with this team.
All right. Hey everyone, my name is Chris. This is Harry and Mikey. We are Rocket Fuel. We're a team that provides a team as a service platform to help other startups and companies accelerate the roadmap. We've been working with Collab.Land as technology providers for the past few years, I think. And this has been a very transformative journey for us as well, because we aspire to become a DAO and are learning together through this process.
All right, so where do we start? There's so much to talk about, and we have like 13 minutes. So I'll kick it off, and then feel free to interrupt at any point. So I helped launch Moloch DAO, the framework, in 2019. Prior to that, like, DAOs were not quite a thing. And the way I look at DAOs and tokens, really, I don't see it from like a financial perspective. I see it more from like a coordination and an alignment tool. And what I've experienced in this last couple of years as the DAO ecosystem has evolved is that there is this like preponderance of just like, oh, we can just kind of do whatever we want, it's free flowing, it's just community. But what we wanted to do here with Collab.Land is like see if we can actually have like a proper business, and how do we exit to community in a responsible way. And so when we were forming and thinking about organizationally, even before we were a DAO, because we were a central organization abridged, and to me it didn't make sense to then do all the work as a bridge and then just kind of let it go. So even before we did all of the kind of task work to be able to launch the DAO, organizationally, I wanted to make sure that it was set up so that we can work with like consultants at first. And these consultants then would transition into a DAO. And I guess that can lead off into our relationship first, talking about Rocket Fuel. So Rocket Fuel was a consultancy that a bridge hired to help build out some of the core features of Collab.Land. But when we started our relationship, we both intended to be a DAO. So Collab.Land is now a DAO, and Rocket Fuel is planning to be a DAO. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how your approach as a service-based DAO plans to play out, and looking toward what we do at Collab.Land as kind of like a foreshadowing of what you plan to do with Rocket Fuel.
Yeah, so I guess as we form this playbook on how to evolve into a DAO, I think that the most important thing that made our collaboration work is the fact that we focused on the people aspect of it, which means that in everything we do, we build a solid foundation of trust between us, and at the same time, we as Rocket Fuel, instead of having a typical like transactional relationship, we gradually became an extension of the Collab.Land community. So having aligned goals and working with the spirit of co-ownership is what actually makes this work. And from our side, we really focus a lot on process as well. And of course, there's the technology part of it, but that doesn't replace the people aspect of it. So the processes we use and the artifacts we base everything upon is just the glue that brings everything together. On that, I want to pass the mic to Mickael as well, if you want to talk a little bit about our approach, about the people, process, technology pillars and how we approach the decentralization.
So just to touch on people, process, technology. The way we use it in terms of how we're building the relationship with, and the example that's been set with the relationship with Collab.Land. As we're moving forward, what we're trying to do is develop a people pillar that is based on pods. So we're offering Collab.Land, let's say, the service, the people, and the talent to be able to do the work. Full stack from product design through to implementation. For process, we're very design thinking oriented, and for process, we're very design thinking oriented. We put a lot of emphasis into the empathize and the define phases of the process, and those key processes drive feature requirements and solutioning through to deployment. From a technology standpoint, we relied very heavily on working with Raymond, who's here in front of us, and he's been a guiding light in terms of providing us with the back end and the SDK to deliver a front end with. So he's been central as well in helping us decentralize and learn how to do that.
Yeah, so just to take this one. I think it's been, as I said, a very transformative journey. We're still going through the weeds of it. And we're learning a lot from the process you are going through on how we can decentralize, how we can become a DAO, and besides our relationship, how we can incentivize other freelancers to grow our team and do this in a decentralized manner. So.
Yeah, a lot of people think that you launch a token and then the token will bring everyone together and then you start working together. For us, and what I experienced, and this is why even before we had a token, we have these relationships. These are trust-based relationships, not transactional ones. And it's actually the trust that you need to establish first, and then you can build a token on top of these relationships. Then it turns into a more powerful relationship because now you have this transactional bond on top of this foundation of trust. And so Rocket Fuel is not yet a DAO. We have just become a DAO. I think FireEye has a DAO.
FireEye is half a DAO.
Let's talk about this.
We pretend to be a DAO because it sounds cooler. I wanted to completely hijack the panel conversation and sort of talk a little, I know there's only 6 minutes left, and talk a little bit about how I think it's really exciting of what Collab.Land is doing with the proposal process and with the 100 communities that are getting an airdrop on top of optimism. So there's been a lot of governance experiments that have taken place in the past 3 years, 4 years since DAOs have existed, and they're still really expensive and annoying. And so on one side of it, using optimism to reduce that cost and go from paying $20 for a transaction to 2 cents, I think is really meaningful. But that's really meaningful for the Collab.Land community, right? Those top 100 communities is 1 million people, roughly, a couple of 600,000 people, and none of them have done governance before, most of them, right? Most of them are NFT holders. Even the Bored Apes don't do any meaningful governance. And so giving those people a drop and like getting them to engage in this proposal process, I think is actually a lot more meaningful than we're giving it credit, right? Getting the top 100 Discord communities to write proposals about how they receive tokens has never happened before. And so like I think a lot of credit is due to like all of the people sitting here, but especially the Collab.Land team of like doing that experiment, one on optimism, and two sort of like unlocking the idea of governance for like NFT communities.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I just wanted to also touch on the origami framework. You know, for us at Collab.Land, we are trying to be this kind of bridge between like Web 2 and Web 3. I mean, like the company Abridged, its namesake is to kind of shortcut mainstream adoption into Web 3. And we looked at origami as a great starting point. And Ben, if you want to talk a little bit about origami.
Yeah, so my experience has been building several different DAOs. One using Moloch and completely flat hierarchy for a bunch of my friends to buy NFTs, all the way to helping start Orange DAO, which is a 1,500 member, mostly YC founders, and very active with a large treasury and multiple projects running. So very complex governance, running a seasonal budgetary process that contains millions of dollars of treasury. And so I've run the gamut. And so like what James was saying, I believe that decentralization is a direction, not a destination. So you can take any centralized organization and start to see it decentralized by moving yourself into transparent open governance, having transparent membership, tokenization, all the things that we are experimenting today in real time at this large scale is going to translate to much larger and more efficient coordination of tens of thousands, if not millions of people around the world. And that's the dream that I think they're working towards, is how do you get people to learn, participate, and earn when you create value for the community?
Awesome, thank you.
Maybe I'll pick back off of that.
Yes, please.
I love what you said about building community and then kind of building trust and then coming up with a framework, because I think that's usually how I advise people when I want to see, and what sometimes I find lacking a little bit in the movement, both in cooperatives but also for DAOs, that we're building a product before we're building community, whereas here we have an entity or a bridge that has a fantastic product, but that has actually built on trust and building community first before the legal framework comes into place, so that the design and coming up with the entity type that makes sense is something that is natural, that allows for the development. And I think you've done a great job with that.
Thank you. I mean, it's like, it's weird if we were like this central organization and then we say all of a sudden flip a switch, we have a token and become a DAO. Like where do we go? What pattern can we match? And that's why it was important at the beginning when I was reflecting on this and having Collab.Land become a DAO eventually, knowing this, 3 years ago, we have to start with us first, right? And then it kind of replicates itself. And so ultimately, I guess the TLDR here, whatever the mechanism is, right? Like, I think a lot of you here that are interested in DAOs, you can get caught up in the process of voting this way, voting that way, doing this and doing that. I kind of, because I've been in the DAO scene for a while, I kind of look at people that are like these influencers in DAOs as like the Web3 MBAs, where like there's a lot of, oh, you should do it this way and that way, where I think that like we're still so early, there's no way of really doing a DAO. And I would say, it's really purpose over process. And I think that is what we want to focus in on. And this is why, like, for me, like, I needed practice in order to, like, figure out when we became a DAO, how do we organize, right? It doesn't make sense logically for a central organization just to exit to community and just say, hey, here you go. We needed to start before we exited to community with these componentized constructs. Keep the core team as lean as possible. And this is why we worked with Rocket Fuel. And we didn't come up with all the mechanisms, and we know that there are experts like FireEyes. And even though I helped with like the original Moloch framework, I looked to origami, right? Because when we become a DAO, it can't, and it's hard to. And I think that like a bunch of, or like Bitcoin or Ethereum originally are maybe the exception to the rule when it comes to, kind of decentralizing at the very beginning. So I would say that it's been a great journey here, but I would encourage everyone that is looking to create a DAO to reach out and you have to think about it your own way, with your own values. One last thing, and then I'll throw it to any one of you here, is, ultimately, my wife is my co-founder, right? And so we've been together for 28 years. And really, that is where it all starts. And it's all relationship-based. And that's kind of how I see this growing. And so it grew from the two of us and our relationship to a company and organization here with a bunch of partners to the general public. And I think that is kind of what we want to cultivate here, at least for us in our DAO. And everyone else's DAOs will be different. But I think it's really like, for me, the way I think about it, and what's my guiding light here with Collab.Land and the Collab.Land DAO is just being true to yourself, right? So as you go out, as you look at and listen to other panels, and you think of different ways, and you'll learn different techniques when it comes to creating DAOs, it really is this opportunity just to create our own future together here that we want to see. So I don't know if we are negative 16.
As a final note, a second final note, I think I would emphasize that from a FireEye's perspective, generally we choose 2 or 3, maybe 4 projects a year that we would work with. And so the last one was Optimism. The one before that was ENS, .eth domains. When we work with projects, it's really about how far does this network go? And who is affected by this network? So ENS, it's very obvious. Having an ENS name is cool. For Optimism, having roll-ups and more scalability is cool and is useful for Ethereum. And for Collab.Land, there is millions of, tens of millions of people that are using Collab.Land that have very little context about what's going on here. They bought one NFT, joined a community, and now they're using Collab.Land. So sort of how can we use those tools to make serious impact? It's very cool.
Yeah, the other challenge and opportunity that we see, especially with Collab.Land, is just how many people want to be a part of this DAO and how many people want to participate. If you think about teaching 50,000 people who have never been a part of a DAO how to behave, let alone participate in governance and earn, it is an incredible communications and onboarding challenge. And that requires human beings to see each other and say, we are people and we see you where you need to learn, and to provide that information, because without it, DAOs will not grow. And we have to do that work now for the next several years to get there.
Yeah, excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Feel free to come up to us, ask questions. We're all kind of learning and figuring this out as we go. I can't imagine, I've been in the Ethereum ecosystem for many years, and now we're here. Look at all these people, right? And it's going to continue to grow. And I think it's just facilitating conversation and dialogue here, and we're all going to be learning together. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.